The sky over Valaris Prime burned with colors no one would have imagined beautiful. Once proud cities stretched across the horizon, shining with glass towers and metal spires. Now the landscape was fractured. Smoke rose from ruined districts. Shadows of warships burned in the atmosphere. The air smelled of ash, ozone, and fear. Queen Sailria stood on the balcony of her citadel, her hands gripping the cold metal railing as if it could hold back the destruction. Her armor, once polished and gleaming, was scratched, dented, and streaked with the dust of dying worlds. She was young, only 27 cycles old by Valari standards, but the lines of exhaustion etched into her face made her appear older. Her eyes, however, still burned with stubborn pride. The Korth Dominion had arrived without warning. They were brutal, merciless, and efficient. In weeks, the Korth fleets had destroyed half the Valari Empire. Entire worlds had gone silent. Ships, cities, armies, all annihilated. Valaris Prime itself had survived only because Queen Sailria had evacuated most civilians underground before the Korth fleet arrived. Yet even that safety was temporary. The ground trembled with distant explosions, the Korth hammering Valaris from orbit with relentless precision. "Your Majesty," said Commander Thalric, the Queen's chief advisor. He was an older Valari, with gray scales along his neck and a spine bent from decades of battles. "The fleet reports we cannot hold the outer defenses much longer. If the Korth break through, the citadel will fall." Sailria didn't turn to him. Her gaze remained on the horizon, where the smoke twisted into black clouds and glowing fire. "Then let them come," she whispered almost to herself. "I will see them die before they touch our people." Thalric hesitated. He had known many queens, but none like Sailria. She carried the stubbornness of Valari royalty, but this was no ordinary battle. They were facing extinction. "Your Majesty, we cannot win this war alone," he said finally. She exhaled, a sharp hiss through her nostrils. "I know." Her voice was low, almost a plea, though she hated herself for it. "And that is why we must call for help." The words hung in the air like a fragile spark. They had not asked for aid in 1,000 cycles. The Valari Empire had ruled with strength, not mercy. They had conquered, dominated, and enslaved worlds. To admit weakness, to beg, was unheard of. Yet here she was, the Queen turned to face her advisors. "Prepare the distress signal. Send it to every known civilization, even those who hate us, even those who should not help us." The room fell silent. One advisor dared to speak. "Your Majesty, the galaxy. We have many enemies. Many of them have long memories. Some may answer our call with weapons, not aid." Sailria's eyes narrowed. "Then let them come with weapons. At least let someone come." Thalric bowed his head. "It will be done." In the control chamber below the balcony, the Valari engineers worked in nervous frenzy. Holographic screens displayed stars, fleets, and planets. Their hands moved quickly over panels, trying to send out a signal that would be heard across the galaxy. Their message was simple. To any species capable of helping us, "We are the Valari. Our empire is destroyed. Our people die. If there is mercy left in the galaxy, answer our call." It was not a proud message. It was a desperate one. The Queen returned to her balcony, watching the distant stars blink as if ignoring her plea. She thought about all she had lost. Her fleets, her generals, her brothers and sisters, her family. Valari pride had always been their strength, but now that pride felt like a shackle, weighing her down with every choice. She clenched her fists. "I will not let my people die alone," she murmured. Hours turned into days. The Valari tried to maintain hope, but hope is fragile when the galaxy is silent. Messages bounced back unanswered. Stars that once teamed with allies seemed distant and indifferent. The civilians in the underground shelters grew restless. Children cried for food that was running low. Adults whispered rumors of betrayal. Even Thalric avoided looking directly at the Queen, afraid she might see his doubts. Yet Sailria refused to give in to despair. She walked through the underground shelters daily, checking on the survivors. She comforted children, offered a hand to the injured, and spoke with soldiers who had lost everything. Every step reminded her of why she had to keep going. This was no longer a battle for pride or empire. It was a fight for survival. On the 37th day of the siege, the horizon flickered with a strange light. It was not the Korth ship's red glow, nor the green fire of Valari defenses. It was different. Soft, almost gentle, but moving fast. The Queen's heart skipped. Thalric came running, his communicator blinking with urgent alerts. Your Majesty, sensors detect a ship. Approaching from outside the system, it's human. Sailria froze. Humans. She had only heard stories, legends from the ancient wars. A species thought primitive, yet somehow surviving against impossible odds. Humans? She whispered. Are they allies? Unknown, Your Majesty, Thalric admitted. But it is a single vessel. It shouldn't be able to reach us. It may be a trap. The Queen's eyes narrowed. A trap, possibly. But still. Hope stirred in her chest like a flickering flame. Prepare the landing platform. Send a welcoming party. And alert the soldiers, no weapon fire unless ordered. We must see who they are before we judge them. As the ship entered the system, it became visible even to the naked eye. It was small, a lone craft gliding like a predator through the debris of the war-torn system. Its hull was scratched, faded, and clearly ancient. But it moved with precision, slicing through space without hesitation. Sailria stood on the balcony, feeling a strange mixture of fear and excitement. She had spent weeks preparing for death. Now suddenly, there was the possibility of salvation. The ship's descent was slow but deliberate. Dust clouds and storm winds swirled as it approached Prime. The Queen's soldiers watched in disbelief, their weapons lowered in confusion. No single ship should dare enter their atmosphere alone, let alone land near the Citadel. When the ramp finally descended, a figure appeared, human, tall, strong, wearing armor that seemed modest but efficient. Her helmet reflected the harsh sunlight, hiding her face, yet her posture radiated confidence. Your Majesty, the human said, her voice calm and firm. You called for help. We came. Sailria felt a tremor in her chest. The legends of humans did not prepare her for this, for courage that didn't waver, for strength that did not roar but simply existed. Around her, Valari soldiers whispered, shocked by the audacity of this single visitor. Thalric stepped forward, his jaw tight. Your Majesty, it is one human. One. How can they possibly— Sailria raised a hand, cutting him off. Watch, the human removed her helmet. Queen Sailria finally saw her face, calm, determined, unshaken by the sight of burning cities and dying soldiers. There was no arrogance, no fear. Only purpose. The Queen swallowed. You came alone? The human smiled faintly. We never come alone. We bring what is needed. Your people need hope and we bring it. Sailria felt something strange, relief, awe, and disbelief all at once. She wanted to speak, to demand answers, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she simply nodded. For the first time in weeks, the sky over Prime felt a little less like the end. The Valari had sent a desperate call. The galaxy had remained silent, and yet somehow help had arrived. The human ship stood alone on the landing platform, its engines hissing and cooling after the jump through Prime's atmosphere. The Valari soldiers clustered near the Queen's citadel, weapons ready but uncertain. Some whispered fears, others whispered awe. No one had ever seen a human vessel in action, let alone land on their planet unchallenged. Queen Sailria descended the steps of her balcony to meet the human captain. Her steps were steady, but her heart raced. She had fought countless wars, yet standing before this one human filled her with a strange mix of hope and disbelief. The human captain strode forward, her armor scratched but gleaming faintly in the pale sunlight. Every step seemed purposeful, as if she owned the ground beneath her feet. Her name, Sailria learned later, was Ilara Voss. Your Majesty, Ilara said again, her voice calm yet commanding. I am here to help. Sailria studied her carefully. Humans were smaller than Valari, not physically imposing in the same way. Yet there was a presence, an aura of confidence and calm that radiated from Ilara. It was as if she carried an invisible weight of history, of countless battles fought and survived. You came alone? Sailria asked, her voice tight. Ilara smiled faintly, a gesture that seemed almost impossible amidst the smoke and destruction. We rarely come alone, but we do not need fleets to make a difference. Not always. Some battles are won by skill, not numbers. The Queen blinked. She had heard legends of humans, how they survived wars, plundered planets, and resisted annihilation against impossible odds, but seeing one in person made the tales seem almost unreal. Commander Thalric stepped forward, his tone cautious. Your Majesty, one ship cannot possibly defeat the Korth fleets. This is madness. Saelria's eyes glinted. Madness is all we have left. Watch, Thalric. Ilara turned to the sensors and spoke in a low tone, her hands moving swiftly over a control panel. The ship hummed and whirred as hidden mechanisms activated. What appeared to be a modest craft suddenly became a fortress of engineering. Shields flickered into life, energy pulses flared along the hull, and strange devices projected light across the landing platform. The Valari soldiers gasped. Some whispered to one another. Is this magic? Prepare your forces, Ilara said, her eyes scanning the horizon. They will come. Before anyone could ask what she meant, the sky above Valaris Prime darkened with a familiar and terrifying glow. The Korth Dominion had arrived, their fleet more massive than anyone had anticipated. Ships larger than entire Valari cities descended, bristling with weapons, energy beams cutting through the atmosphere like knives. Saelria felt her stomach tighten. She had thought the humans might be allies, but could one ship, one human, really face this? Ilara stepped closer to the Queen. Your soldiers will follow my orders. They may not understand, but they will adapt. Trust me. Saelria nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at her. She had led armies, commanded fleets, and seen countless victories and defeats. But humans, she had no experience with them, except through stories. Yet there was something in Ilara's presence that demanded trust. Very well, the Queen said. Do what you must. The first strike came without warning. A Korth frigate swooped low, firing a barrage of plasma cannons at the citadel. Valari defenses fired back, but the cannons barely scratched the enemy shields. The Queen's soldiers watched in despair as their fortifications began to crumble. Ilara moved swiftly to the ship's command center. Engage the countermeasures, she ordered. Her crew, barely a dozen humans, worked with precision that left the Valari speechless. Tiny drones shot from the ship, weaving around the enemy fire. Energy pulses erupted, intercepting the Korth plasma bolts. The humans did not wait for permission or hesitation. They acted with efficiency, moving as if they had trained for centuries in the art of survival and war. Then Ilara gave the order. The ship's hidden weapons activated. Beams of concentrated energy, unlike anything the Valari had ever seen, tore through the Korth frigate. The massive enemy ship shuddered, its shields failing, and exploded in a ball of fire, debris raining down across the battlefield. Gasps and shouts erupted from the Valari ranks. Their disbelief became awe. One ship destroyed a Korth frigate? Ilara turned her gaze to the Queen. They will not stop until they are gone. We need to move quickly. For hours the battle raged. The Korth fleet attacked relentlessly, but Ilara and her small team of humans orchestrated a defense that seemed impossible. Valari soldiers learned on the fly, following human tactics that prioritized survival, agility, and ingenuity over brute strength. One Valari officer, Commander Ralvek, shouted in disbelief, They're predicting the Korth movements before they even happen. That is human strategy, Ilara replied calmly. They think differently. They survive differently. You will learn if you survive this day. The Queen watched from her command tower as Ilara led daring strikes against the Korth forces. At one point, the human captain personally guided a small fighter squadron, weaving through enemy fire, destroying multiple ships while never exposing herself to danger unnecessarily. Her calm focus and precise commands turned chaos into order. Queen Saelria realized something profound. Humans did not rely solely on technology, weapons, or numbers. They relied on willpower, intuition, and adaptability. Night fell on Valaris Prime, but the battle continued. Fires raged across the surface, illuminating the Queen's citadel with red and gold light. Yet in the midst of destruction, humans fought with a clarity the Valari had never seen. Ilara's ship moved across the battlefield, striking enemy ships with precision, retreating when necessary, then striking again. The Korth could not predict the humans' actions. Valari soldiers, inspired and desperate, began to follow the humans' lead, learning their techniques, their quick improvisations, their strange and effective ways of using the terrain and technology to survive. The Queen could hardly believe what she was witnessing. For generations, Valari had been taught that they were the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Yet here was a human, a single human captain, and she was teaching them humility. Finally, after hours of relentless combat, the Korth fleet began to retreat. The survivors limped away, battered and broken. The human ship too showed signs of damage, but it remained operational. When the dust settled, Queen Selria approached Alara's ship. The human captain stepped down from the ramp, unscathed and calm, her armor streaked with scorch marks. "You did it," the Queen said softly, almost in disbelief. "You saved ValerisPrime. One ship, one human." Ilara shook her head. "We didn't save it alone. Your soldiers fought bravely once they learned how. They just needed someone to show them how to survive. That's all." Selria studied her carefully. There was no arrogance in the human's tone, no boast, only quiet confidence and a belief in action over words. You are extraordinary," the Queen admitted. "I've fought countless wars, but I have never seen this." Ilara smiled faintly. "Extraordinary is what humans do when they refuse to die quietly. You are still alive, and so are your people. That is enough." The Queen felt a strange mix of gratitude and awe. In her long life, she had seen empires rise and fall, planets burned, and countless lives lost. Yet here was a species she had once considered primitive. One ship, one human, changing the course of a battle that seemed hopeless. That night, the Queen walked through the remains of her city. Fires still burned, but the people no longer hid. Soldiers were working with humans to repair defenses. Civilians whispered in excitement as they watched humans move through the streets, assessing damage, distributing aid, and teaching the Valari how to survive in a world under siege. The Queen paused at a damaged plaza. Children ran past her, laughing despite the smoke and ruin. Adults worked with a newfound energy, their despair replaced with hope. And she realized something she had not known before. Hope was contagious, but it needed a spark. Humans were that spark. Selria looked up at the stars and whispered to herself, "We called for help and then they came." The sky over ValerisPrime was no longer quiet. The first strike had come and gone, but the Korth Dominion was far from finished. The Queen stood on the balcony of her citadel, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon where more enemy ships were arriving. Smoke and fire colored the clouds red and black, and every Valari soldier below her trembled in fear, even those who had survived the previous attacks. Yet in the midst of despair, there was a spark. One ship, Alara Voss's human vessel, hovered calmly in orbit, its engines glowing softly. Its presence alone seemed to inspire the Valari. They had fought and fled before, but now, led by humans, they had a chance. "Ilara," Selria said, her voice steady despite the tension. "They are coming. Will you help us again?" Ilara's eyes scanned the incoming fleet. She did not smile, but there was confidence in her posture. "We will stop them. No one leaves ValerisPrime today unless they mean to survive, and I do not leave without finishing the fight." Below in the city streets, Valari soldiers scrambled to follow the humans' orders. They had learned quickly in the last battle. Humans fought differently. They did not rely on brute force or rigid formation. They adapted, used terrain creatively, and exploited every weakness. Ilara moved among them, issuing precise instructions. "Pair up, use the buildings for cover. The Korth have heavy cannons. Don't let them line up a shot. Watch your angles, anticipate movement. Stay mobile. Fire only when it counts." A Valari officer whispered to his companion. "She speaks as if she knows the enemy's mind before they act." "She does," the companion replied, awestruck. "She survived when we would have died." The first wave of Korth ships descended like predators, massive and heavily armored. They fired beams of energy that tore through the outskirts of ValerisPrime's defenses. Valari soldiers fired blindly, hoping to intercept the attacks, but their weapons had little effect on the enemy shields. Panic threatened to take hold, but Ilara was ready. "Deploy drones," she shouted. Small metallic units shot from the human ship, buzzing like swarms of angry insects. They intercepted Korth fire, absorbing beams and detonating near enemy ships to disrupt their formation. Valari soldiers stared in disbelief. These humans used tools, speed, and strategy in ways they had never imagined. "We must follow her lead," Commander Relvik shouted, rallying his troops. "She will show us how to survive." The battle intensified. The Korth unleashed heavy frigates, each larger than a Valari city, their cannons capable of vaporizing entire battalions. Ilara guided the Valari forces with calm precision. She directed small squads to flank, retreat, and strike back at weak points in the enemy formation. At one point, a Korth dreadnought appeared, casting a shadow across the citadel. Its weapons charged, glowing with deadly energy. The Valari froze. There was no conventional weapon that could pierce its shields. Ilara assessed the situation quickly. "We need to split their attention," she said, turning to a Valari squad leader. "Draw fire to the northern district. Use the terrain. I'll take the dreadnought head-on with the ship." "Alone?" the officer asked, horrified. "Alone?" Ilara repeated. Her eyes were calm. "Yes, but I have a plan. Trust me." The human's ship darted forward, weaving through fire like a phantom. Energy beams tore past, but none struck the ship. Ilara unleashed a hidden weapon, a concentrated energy pulse that disrupted the dreadnought's shields. The massive enemy vessel shuddered and faltered, exposing its weak points. Valari soldiers, inspired, followed Ilara's tactic. They struck at the enemy from angles they had never considered, using speed, cover, and strategy rather than brute force. One by one, Korth ships began to fall. Queen Selria watched in disbelief. The legends of humans surviving impossible odds were true. This one human ship, with her small crew, was changing the course of a battle that had seemed hopeless. Hours passed. Explosions lit the horizon, and the sky became a storm of fire and debris. Valari soldiers, guided by humans, fought with renewed strength. They adapted quickly, taking advantage of the humans' teachings: mobility over formation, strategy over brute strength, calculation over panic. Ilara's presence was everywhere, issuing orders, leading attacks, covering retreats, and coordinating drone swarms. Valari officers followed her instructions with growing trust, realizing that their pride alone could not save them. Humanity's methods were different, effective, and deadly. At one critical moment, a Korth frigate broke through to the central plaza, threatening the Queen's citadel. Its weapons charged, capable of annihilating everything in seconds. Ilara acted instantly. She piloted the human ship directly into the path of the frigate, dodging energy blasts with impossible precision. She fired a concentrated beam at the frigate's main engines, crippling it instantly. Then, using the ship's remaining power, she launched a series of micro-drones that disabled the remaining weapons. The frigate crashed, sending shockwaves across the plaza. Valari soldiers cheered, though many could not comprehend how one human could achieve such feats. The Korth fleets were relentless. Another wave arrived, larger than before, determined to wipe Valaris Prime from the galaxy. But the humans and Valari were ready. Humans taught Valari soldiers to think creatively, hiding in rubble to ambush Korth forces, using reflective surfaces to confuse sensors, setting traps that even advanced Korth technology could not predict. "Use your brains, not just your weapons," Ilara shouted over the chaos. "Outsmart them. Every trick counts." The Valari, previously bound by rigid military doctrine, adapted quickly. They flanked, retreated, and struck with precision. The human captain led by example, taking dangerous positions without hesitation, inspiring courage in those who had thought all hope lost. As the sun rose on Valaris Prime, the battlefield was littered with destroyed ships, both Korth and Valari. Smoke curled into the sky. Fires burned across the city. Yet in the midst of devastation, a new energy pulsed through the survivors: hope. Queen Selria stood on her balcony, watching the aftermath. She felt a strange mixture of awe and gratitude. One human ship had changed the course of an entire battle. Humans were not gods, not invincible, yet their courage, intelligence, and adaptability had turned despair into victory. "Ilara," the Queen called, her voice carrying across the plaza. "Your people, your species, they are unlike anything we have ever known. I do not have words." Ilara approached, calm as always. "We do not seek words. We seek survival. We do not fight for glory only because it must be done. And today Valaris Prime must survive." Selria nodded, her eyes misting. We called for help. And you came. One human, one ship, yet it is enough. Ilara smiled faintly. It is never just one human. It is the will of humanity. We survive because we refuse to yield, and we fight for those who cannot defend themselves. The Queen looked at the Valari soldiers and civilians who had survived the battle. Their faces were smeared with ash and blood, yet their eyes shone with renewed courage. They had seen what humans could do. They had learned that survival required more than strength. It required ingenuity, adaptability, and determination. The humans stayed with the Valari for days, repairing defenses, coordinating evacuation efforts, and preparing for the inevitable next attack. Every day they taught the Valari new ways to fight, how to move quickly through urban ruins, how to use makeshift weapons, how to coordinate attacks without communication lag, and how to anticipate enemy tactics. Queen Salria walked among them, watching her people learn. She realized that this was more than a battle for survival. It was a lesson in resilience, a glimpse of a species that had survived the impossible for centuries. Humans were not gods. They were survivors, and their strength was contagious. At night, the Queen stood once more on her balcony. The stars above seemed distant yet full of promise. She thought of the first human she had met, Ilara Voss, and the words she had spoken. We survive because we refuse to yield. Salria repeated the words softly. They resonated deep within her. She understood now that survival was more than weapons, shields, or armies. It was willpower, courage, and the refusal to surrender, even when all hope seemed lost. Valaris Prime was not yet safe, but for the first time in weeks the Queen felt something she had not felt since before the Korth invasion. Hope. And it was stronger than fear, louder than despair, and more powerful than any fleet the galaxy could assemble. The humans had arrived, and they had shown the Valari Empire that even in the face of annihilation, survival was possible. The ruins of Valaris Prime were quiet for the first time in days. Fires still smoldered in the streets, smoke curling into the early morning sky. But the Korth Dominion had retreated, at least for now. The Valari soldiers, once broken and fearful, moved through the city with a new determination. Their eyes no longer carried only despair. They reflected a glimmer of hope. At the heart of this change was one human, Ilara Voss. She walked among the Valari forces, calm and steady, issuing instructions, observing, and teaching. Where she walked, confidence followed. Soldiers, once unsure of themselves, began to adopt her methods. They moved quickly, used cover, and thought creatively. The human way was strange at first, but it worked. Commander Ralvek, Ilara said, stopping beside him in the rubble of a collapsed plaza. You've been leading your men like generals of old. That will not survive the Korth. You must think smaller, faster, smarter. Use what you have. The enemy will never see it coming. Ralvek frowned. Smarter. Not stronger? Ilara nodded. Strength alone will not save you. You must anticipate, adapt, and act. Humans call it strategy. You'll understand it soon. Ralvek hesitated, then nodded. He watched as Ilara demonstrated. A small squad of humans crawled through the ruins, using debris for cover, setting small traps that could disable enemy drones, and moving in silence. They emerged from nowhere, striking target dummies with precision. Valari soldiers began to mimic their movements, slowly gaining confidence in their newfound tactics. Queen Salria watched from the Citadel balcony. She had learned much in recent days. Humans were not only strong, but they taught others to become strong. They shared knowledge, inspired courage, and turned ordinary soldiers into fighters capable of outsmarting the Korth. Your Majesty, Thalric said beside her, these humans, they are extraordinary. They do not command through fear or status, they lead through example. Our soldiers, they respond. They adapt. Salria nodded. I see it. And we will need every lesson we can get. The Korth will return. They will strike harder, faster, and without mercy. We must be ready. Ilara moved among the Valari civilians as well, teaching survival techniques. She instructed them on how to reinforce buildings, how to scavenge useful materials, and how to organize quickly in case of an airstrike. Children watched in fascination as humans demonstrated ways to create simple alarms and signals to warn of approaching enemies. A Valari mother whispered to another, I never thought I would feel hope again. But look at them. They do not fear. They fight even when all seems lost. Ilara overheard the words and smiled faintly. Hope is a weapon, she said quietly. Stronger than any cannon, sharper than any blade. Days turned into a week. The humans stayed, rebuilding defenses and preparing the Valari for the inevitable return of the Korth. Their presence transformed the city. Soldiers moved with purpose, civilians contributed to defenses, and even the Queen herself felt renewed strength. Alara and her small team devised new strategies. They used tunnels and ruins to create traps. They organized small strike teams capable of taking out Korth patrols before the main attack. Valari soldiers learned to combine their natural strength and technology with human tactics. Fast, adaptive, and precise. One day, while inspecting the northern defenses, Alara gathered the Queen and her top commanders. Listen carefully, she said. The Korth will come again. They will expect us to defend as we always have. But we will not. They will fall into our traps. They will underestimate your soldiers. And when that happens, we strike. Hard, coordinated, efficient. We win because we refuse to lose. Saleria studied her closely. You make it sound so simple. But the Korth are merciless. Even humans cannot survive against them alone. Ilara's eyes were steady. Alone, perhaps. But together, we are unstoppable. Valari strength, human strategy, and courage. That is more than the Korth can handle. The Queen realized then that the humans were not just fighters, they were teachers, mentors, and morale builders. They instilled not only skill but confidence. Valari soldiers no longer trembled before the enemy. They planned, adapted, and struck with purpose. Training continued daily. Humans introduced new methods, communication signals that bypassed Korth jamming devices, quick evacuation drills, and ways to use energy weapons more efficiently. Valari soldiers adapted quickly. Some initially resisted, clinging to their traditional ways, but even they could not deny the effectiveness of the human methods. During one drill, a small squad of Valari was tasked with defending a critical supply depot. Ilara observed silently as the squad hesitated at first, then used cover, set traps, and ambushed the enemy target dummies with precision. When the drill ended, she nodded in approval. Better, she said simply. Much better. You think now like humans, only faster. Ralvek, the squad leader, looked at her in surprise. Like humans? Yes, Ilara replied. Adaptability, observation, action. You've learned it in days what would take years without guidance. That is your strength, and soon, the Korth will see it too. Meanwhile, the civilians were not idle. Under Ilara's guidance, they reinforced buildings, set up emergency medical stations, and organized supply lines. Even children played a role, helping to set alarms or carry messages. The Queen walked among them, amazed at the energy and organization humans inspired. This is remarkable, she whispered to Thalric. They make our people believe in themselves. In survival. In hope. Thalric nodded slowly. It is more than that, Your Majesty. They make our people fearless. And a fearless soldier is more dangerous than the strongest weapon. As the preparations continued, scouts returned with news. The Korth were approaching again, faster and in greater numbers than before. Panic threatened to return among the Valari, but Ilara acted quickly. She called a council with the Queen, the commanders, and her human crew. They will not expect what we've prepared, she said. We will use the city, the terrain, and every trick we've learned to our advantage. You have the knowledge. You have the courage. And you have me. Together we will stop them. Saleria felt a strange sense of calm. The humans had taught her people more than survival. They had taught them to fight as a unified force, adaptable and fearless. For the first time, she believed that Valaris Prime could endure, even against the might of the Korth Dominion. Night fell, and the city glowed with the soft light of prepared defenses. Energy barriers hummed along the streets, traps were hidden, and soldiers waited quietly, ready to act. Humans moved among them, checking positions, offering advice, and instilling confidence. Ilara paused for a moment, looking at the Queen. Tomorrow, she said, you will see the Korth fall not because we are stronger, but because we are smarter. Humanity fights not with arrogance, but with cunning and resolve. That is the human way, Saleria nodded. And tomorrow Valaris Prime will survive because of humans. And because of us, Ilara's eyes glinted. We will show them something they never expected, that a people who refuse to surrender cannot be defeated. The night was silent, but it was the calm before a storm. The Korth fleet approached in the darkness beyond Valaris Prime's orbit, unaware that the city below had transformed. Valari soldiers were no longer scared, civilians were organized, and humans had taught them strategies that even the Korth could not anticipate. When dawn came, the final battle would begin. And when it did, Valaris Prime would stand, not as a broken city but as a united force, Valari and humans together, stronger than any enemy could imagine. In the quiet moments before the storm, Saelria walked through the streets. She saw children playing near makeshift barricades, soldiers sharpening weapons, and humans moving among them with calm determination. She realized that the galaxy had underestimated humans, just as she had once underestimated hope. "Elara," the Queen whispered softly. "Your people, they are extraordinary." Elara smiled faintly. "We survive, Your Majesty. That is all we do, and we fight for those who cannot fight for themselves." Saelria watched the horizon, feeling a sense of strength she had not felt in cycles. The Korth would come, but they would find more than a city. They would find a people united, trained, and fearless. They would find the human way and the Valari way, fused into something unstoppable. The Korth Dominion would soon realize that survival was not just about power or numbers. It was about courage, adaptability, and the refusal to surrender. And humanity had taught the Valari exactly how to do that. The sky over Valaris Prime darkened as the Korth Dominion approached. This time their fleet was massive, hundreds of ships larger than anything the Valari had ever faced. The horizon was a wall of metal and fire, their weapons ready to erase the city below. But Valaris Prime was no longer a city of despair. The streets were lined with Valari soldiers, civilians, and humans, all trained, prepared, and determined. Energy barriers hummed along the walls. Traps and ambush points were set across the ruined landscape. Every soldier moved with purpose. Every civilian knew their role. Queen Saelria stood on the citadel balcony watching the fleet descend. For the first time in weeks, she did not feel fear. She felt confidence. They were ready. "Elara," Saelria called, her voice carrying through the command center. "Are you certain this will work?" Elara Voss stood beside her, calm as always. "We are ready, Your Majesty." Today the Korth will learn that no army can defeat a people who refuse to surrender. Below, Valari soldiers moved in precise formations, using the human tactics they had learned. Small squads darted through the ruins, hiding behind debris, flanking imaginary enemy positions, and setting traps for incoming Korth patrols. Civilians worked in tandem, relaying messages, distributing weapons, and tending to wounded. The entire city had become a living weapon, guided by human strategy and leadership. Elara surveyed the battlefield from her ship. She activated the hidden drones, sending them ahead to disrupt enemy sensors. "They will not see us coming," she said. "Not until it is too late." The first wave of Korth fighters descended on the city. They expected panic, chaos, and fear, but instead found disciplined resistance. Valari soldiers fired strategically, using cover, setting traps, and coordinating attacks with human precision. Small teams darted in and out, striking hard and disappearing before the Korth could respond. One massive Korth frigate attempted to land near the central plaza, but human drones swarmed it, disabling weapons and causing it to crash into the ruins with a deafening explosion. Valari soldiers cheered, inspired by the humans' tactics. Then the main fleet arrived. Massive warships fired energy beams, shaking the city and sending dust clouds into the air. The Korth expected the Valari to fall, but instead the humans led a coordinated counterattack. Elara's ship darted forward, weaving through enemy fire with impossible precision. She guided small squads of Valari soldiers, directing them to weak points in the enemy formation. Every attack was deliberate, calculated, and devastating. One Korth dreadnought aimed its massive cannon at the citadel, intending to obliterate the Queen and her forces. Elara made a quick decision. "I'll draw it away," she said. "Cover the citadel. Don't let a single ship through." With a roar of engines, her human vessel surged forward. The dreadnought fired, massive energy beams tearing through the air. Elara's ship dodged and weaved, drawing fire and attention away from the citadel. Then she unleashed a hidden weapon, a concentrated energy pulse that disrupted the dreadnought's shields. Valari soldiers, inspired by her courage, took the opportunity to strike. Using new tactics learned from humans, small teams attacked from the sides and rear. Explosions rocked the dreadnought. It shuddered, then collapsed into the ruins below, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. The Queen watched in awe. One human had turned the tide of the battle. One human had shown her people that courage, strategy, and adaptability were stronger than fear. The Korth were relentless. They launched wave after wave of ships trying to overwhelm the city. But humans and Valari fought together as one. Alara coordinated strikes from her ship, while Valari soldiers executed precise attacks on the ground. Every human strategy was copied, adapted, and improved by the Valari. Children and civilians assisted, carrying messages, tending to the wounded, and operating emergency systems. The city had become an organism of resistance, with humans at the heart, guiding it, inspiring it, and leading it. Ralvek, the Valari commander, shouted across the plaza, "We can do this! Follow their lead. Do not fear!" And the soldiers did not. They fought with courage and precision, striking the Korth with ingenuity and determination. Hours passed. The battle raged, but the tide began to turn. Korth ships were falling one by one. Their fleet, once imposing, became chaotic and scattered. The human strategies had forced them into traps, into ambushes, into mistakes that cost them dearly. Alara knew the final strike was coming. She rallied the Valari forces and spoke to them directly, her voice amplified across the plaza. "Today we fight not just for Valaris Prime. We fight for survival. We fight for every planet that has been destroyed. We fight for the innocent who cannot defend themselves. And we fight together." The Valari soldiers roared, their energy renewed. Every human and Valari fighter moved with unity, precision, and purpose. The Korth flagship emerged from the clouds, massive and terrifying. It was the largest ship they had ever faced, its weapons capable of annihilating the entire city. The Queen gasped. "You cannot face it alone," she shouted to Alara. Alara shook her head, determination in her eyes. "I will not face it alone. The humans are not alone. Valari civilians, everyone here, together we end this." She piloted her ship directly toward the flagship. Valari forces flanked, setting traps and attacking weak points. Humans coordinated every strike, every maneuver, and every diversion. The flagship fired. Energy beams tore through the battlefield. But humans and Valari had anticipated the attack. They moved with speed, dodging, countering, and striking. Finally, Alara made the impossible call. She directed the human ship to ram the flagship's core, using all remaining energy to disable its systems. The impact caused a massive explosion, tearing through the Korth flagship. Debris rained down as smaller ships retreated in chaos. Valari soldiers cheered. Civilians ran into the streets, crying tears of relief and joy. The battle was over. Queen Selria watched from her balcony, tears in her eyes. "We called for help," she whispered, and humanity answered. Alara stepped down from her ship, battered but unharmed. Her crew followed, quiet and efficient. The humans had done what no one expected. They had changed the course of the war with courage, skill, and determination. The aftermath was both solemn and joyous. The Korth had been defeated, at least for now, but the cost was high. Valari soldiers mourned their fallen, civilians buried the dead, and the Queen oversaw the rebuilding of her city. Yet even in sorrow there was hope. Alara addressed the survivors. "This is not the end, but it is proof that even in the face of impossible odds, we survive. Together we are stronger than anyone believes. Humanity fights not for glory, but for those who cannot fight for themselves. And today Valaris Prime survived because we refused to surrender." The Queen nodded, humbled. "Your courage has shown us a path forward. Not just for today, but for every day after. The galaxy will remember this." In the days following the battle, Valari soldiers continued to train with humans. They rebuilt defenses, repaired ships, and strengthened the city. Civilians helped organize new systems of communication, medical aid, and supplies. The humans did not leave immediately. They stayed to ensure the Valari were ready for any future threats. Selria walked through the streets, seeing her people alive, trained, and confident. Children played, soldiers drilled, and the city thrived despite the scars of war. Humans had not only saved them, they had transformed them. Alara approached the Queen. "Your people are strong," she said. "They will survive, thrive, and fight when needed." "Humans merely showed them the way." Selria smiled. "No, humans reminded us what it means to refuse to die quietly. You have given my people courage, strategy, and hope. That is more than any victory." Alara nodded. "Then remember this day. Remember the human way. Survive, adapt, fight, and protect those who cannot protect themselves. The galaxy may not expect it, but that is our strength. As the sun rose over Valaris Prime, the Queen looked at the city that had almost been destroyed, now alive with energy, hope, and unity. Humans had arrived when they were needed most. They had shown the Valari a new path, a path of courage, ingenuity, and survival.